Amen. Amen. Well, it's so good to be with you. Before we get going, I just want to take a moment and say welcome on behalf of myself and our team. We're so glad that you have chosen to worship with us this weekend. If you are visiting with us today, my name is Harold. I have the opportunity and privilege to serve as lead pastor here. And so this has been a whole new season of news for me and my family. It's almost like every week there's something new and something new and something new, and it's never really getting old. So that's a good thing, right? But one of the things that I'm so excited to share with you is that our staff is expanding. Yeah, all right, yeah, that's good news, right? Expanding, everything, everyone's healthy, nothing's going on, but yeah, we are making some additions to our staff, and I am so excited. We're going to be bringing on an individual by the name of Tanner, and then if you would turn your attention to the screen, and then I will follow up with a couple little details after the video.
Hey Crossbridge, I'm Tanner.
And I'm Grace.
And we're so excited to be moving to Illinois and joining the Crossbridge family. I will be joining the Crossbridge team as the multi-site marketing director and the Peru campus worship director, and I'm so excited for this opportunity.
I currently work as a digital content creator for a Christian clothing company, and I am so excited for this new chapter in our family's life. As
we get ready to move, we would appreciate your prayers for safety as we travel and all the details falling into place. And we thank you guys for everything that you've done so far. It is greatly appreciated, and we are so ready to be with y'all.
Awesome. Yeah, let's give them a round of applause. And I'm so excited because God was just moving and stirring in the midst of Tanner and Grace in a couple really powerful ways. And in a couple weeks, I can't wait to share more of that story. And so essentially, if you weren't able to hear it, Tanner is going to be our multi-site marketing director, and he is going to be leading our Peru team in worship every weekend in Peru. So we're super excited about what Tanner is going to be able to bring to the table for our team and as a staff, multi-site, and also there in Peru. We're going to be blessed to have them. They're an awesome young couple who care about the Lord, who care about serving the church, and they're going to be able to fit right in here at Crossbridge. So a couple details that I want to share with you. May 4th, here in Ottawa, right after the Saturday evening service, we're just going to be having a small reception for them. It's going to be very laid back. They're young. They've only been married just a little over a year. And so we're just going to love on them with some local gift cards and all that kind of stuff. They're going to be living here in Ottawa. And so, but if you could get kind of a card together, I would greatly appreciate that. So they don't know this is coming unless they're watching this online. But if you could do that, I would greatly appreciate it. And then in May 5th, they're going to be in Peru for both services. And then there's going to be a reception, kind of the same thing right after the service, just a chance to go through, hug them, shake their hand and get to know them and be able to love on them. And so I'm super excited for what they are both going to be able to bring to our staff. So I'm super excited. Well, we are in week 3 of our series that we're navigating right now called At the Core. Week 1, we tackled this whole idea and the concept of love unconditionally. And so I'm not going to go into all that because by the time we're done with the series, the review's going to take 28 minutes. I'm not going to be able to preach, and that's not going to be any good. But week 1, we talked about essentially loving unconditionally and about what strings are attached to your love. Right? Because in our humanness, we're always going to have strings attached to our love, but thankfully, we serve a God who loves us unconditionally with no strings attached. And because of him working and being in our life, he can help us. He can help us get to a place where I truly believe that we can love unconditionally. Last week, if you weren't here, we talked about trust fully, right? And so I had this big old plow up here on the stage, and we had this whole crazy idea of if the plow represents the spiritual work that is going on in your life, the spiritual work, the spiritual discipline, what is pulling your plow? And so we talked in the scripture about God is always challenging us to keep our eyes on him. Okay, and so this week I'm super excited because this week we're going to be tackling expect growth. So expect growth, it is, shocker, something that you expect to grow, right? So it's something expected to grow based on information already known. right? That's what the definition is, right? And so one of the things that I so appreciate about who we are as Crossbridge, I'm so thankful that once again, that this is one of our core values. Like a church should want to grow, amen? Like, wouldn't it be awful if our church was just like, well, whatever. Wouldn't that be awful if that was behind the coffee bar here in Ottawa, right? That wouldn't be fun. Like that's not very Christ honoring and all the things. And so one of the things I'm so thankful about our culture, our DNA, who we are as a body of believers is that we want to grow. Do we want to grow numerically? Absolutely. Like absolutely, because we want to lead people into a growing relationship with Jesus. And by doing that, we will grow. God is going to bless us. He's going to anoint us, and he's going to help us to do awesome things. But even more so, sometimes when we talk about expect growth, sometimes we just talk about, okay, well, we want our programs to grow, or we want a team to grow, or we want our finances to grow, or we want just more people participating in worship on the weekends. We want that to grow. But one of the cool things that I love for the organizationally things, expect growth, it's a personal thing. And that's a good thing. It's a challenging thing, but it can be a really good thing. Expecting growth is a huge piece of our relationship with Jesus. It's this idea of constant reflection. It's this idea of constant challenge. But don't worry, it's also this idea of constant encouragement. That's good news. And so one of my desires for you as your lead pastor is that you would have that kind of relationship with Jesus. Is that I hope that you find being here at Crossbridge home and welcoming and you can fit in all the things. But even more so, I hope that you are expecting growth in this season of your life with your relationship with Jesus. I pray that for you. And I love it. I love the fact that God simply just didn't die to save you and me from our sins, but he died to be in relationship with us. Not just for us to be able to maintain in the seasons of life that we're in, but Jesus working through us in such a way that we are actually experiencing growth. Think about it like this, that we actually have the potential to experience what it should feel like to be complete. Doesn't that sound wonderful? Right? Because so often, and I'm going to be talking about it here in just a moment, but so often we have these gaps. And it feels like we have these parts of us that are missing and things of the world try to fill that void. And because I'm telling you that right now because I've experienced it. I'm experiencing it day to day, right? But the awesome part about this whole thing is that we serve a God that truly wants us to experience a completeness, this idea of expecting growth. Let me tell you about a time when Whitney was expecting some growth from me. We were married about 2 months. I had everything figured out. We were married a couple months. We had just gotten our wedding photos back, and she was desperate to have some pictures blown up for the house. Like she wanted them so bad. Talked about it constantly talked about wanting these photos. And so I took it upon myself to want to surprise her. And so I got this idea in my head where she's going to love this. She's going to love this. And so I lied to her. Mistake number one. I said, hey, you're never going to believe this, but I got this amazing surprise for you. You need to come home from work now. So she was at work in the midst of her day. And I took it upon myself to order her something that was so awesome that I knew she was just going to love and adore and just be so thankful for. And so I get this item. I get it in the mail, by the way. It's not pictures. And so that was my big mistake. But so I order this thing and it's at the house and I get it all ready for her and I put it out on the kitchen table. And at that time we were just renting this small little place in Iowa. And so she comes bursting through the doors because I told her that like, I got you your wedding photos because I knew that would get her home, right? right? So apparently I did not have everything figured out. But anyway, but in my train of thinking, I'm like, this is gonna be great. This is gonna be so awesome. And so she comes home and she walks right past this amazing gift that I got her on the kitchen table. She didn't even recognize it. And so she walks right past it and she's looking all through the house. She's looking under the bed and she's looking everywhere for these big canvases that I had made of our wedding photos. And so initially she finally comes in the living room and our little kitchen's right there and the table's there. And she's like, Harold, where are my pictures? I said, I didn't get you pictures. I got you this brand new bow and arrow. Right? So that did not go well. Like that did not go well. That did not go well at all. She appreciated it. I mean, she thought it was okay, but man, she was really devastated. Like she was super, super disappointed. And it wasn't, I went out of my way to buy her something nice. Like it was a really nice one. It was way nicer than the first one I ever had, right? It was super nice. And she was trying to appreciate it, but she was also like extremely devastated, right? Extremely devastated. She wasn't devastated because I bought her something. She was devastated because I bought her something that I wanted her to have. Right? And so essentially kind of what we're going to be talking about here is this. What I did was okay, but when it came to the priority list and the way to love my wife the best way possible, it wasn't the best gift. It wasn't the best way to show my appreciation or whatever the case may be. And essentially, I kind of had this word coming to mind is priorities, priorities, priorities. Right? And so I wanted to get her something, but I wanted her to have something that I wanted her to have. And so maybe you can see this gap in my gift giving ability. I don't know if you follow the 5 love languages, but that is not my gift, right? That is not my love language is giving gifts. But I think Whitney's here. Whitney, have I gotten better a little bit? Like I've given her 2 beautiful children. I've gotten way better, okay? I've gotten way better. But what I'm talking about today, is this message of warning. Because if I would have been smart enough during the time, if I would have been smart enough, I would have reached out and been like, hey, do you think this is a good idea? And if I were to call you all those years back then, you would have said, no way. Right? And so this message, it's kind of like that. It's a message of warning. Well, it doesn't sound very fun, and before you tune out, let's kind of paint this picture together. I want you to think to yourself, what are some of your gaps? What are some of the areas of your life where you aren't experiencing growth? Now, we all have these little nooks and corners of our life, and sure, there's parts of our lives that, yeah, they're growing, and they're on pace, and they're doing well. So, but why is this a big deal for us to be concerned about the areas of our life where we aren't growing? Here's one of the things that I'm extremely thankful for about Jesus Christ and who he is in my life. I know that we all struggle with different things. Like we all have different struggles. What I struggle with would become so foreign to you. What you struggle with might be foreign to me. But what I'm talking about is that I'm so thankful that we serve a God that has a design best for each and every one of us to live into. I truly believe that. I truly believe that no matter what it is that we're facing, God has a best that he has designed for each and every one of us. Why? Because he knows you. He made you. He knows you intimately. He knows me, and he loves us. And so this is why this is a message of warning. This is not a moment to discourage. This is not a moment to say what you've done, what you're dealing with, what you're going through. It's so far gone. It's so far removed that God will not touch it. This is a message of warning to encourage you right where you are. It's never too late. It's never too late. So we're going to be in the book of Hebrews. If you have your Bibles, you can turn there. We're going to be in the Hebrews chapter 5, verse 11, and we're going to be reading a few verses, but it'll be up on the screen if you don't have your Bible or your device with you. In Hebrews chapter 5, it says, we have much to say about this, but it is hard to make it clear to you because you no longer try to understand. In fact, though by this time you ought to be teachers. You need someone to teach you the elementary truths of God's word all over again. You need milk, not solid food. Anyone who lives on milk, being still an infant, is not acquainted with the teaching about righteousness. But solid food is for the mature, who by constant use have trained themselves to distinguish good from evil. Therefore, let us move beyond the elementary teachings about Christ and be taken forward to maturity, not laying again the foundation of repentance from acts that lead to death and faith in God, instruction about cleansing rites, laying on hands, the resurrection of the dead and eternal judgment, and God permitting, we will do so. Well, Pastor Harold, this is not very encouraging. Like you had me in a moment of encouragement, and I could kind of see where you were going, but now this is kind of rough. So what is the context of this passage? So out of all of the scholars and theologians, essentially we don't know for sure, but we believe that Paul is writing this passage. And so essentially Paul is talking with a group of people, and there is a lot to chew on here, and I get it, it can be discouraging, but let's take a moment and see what Paul is really talking about. Paul is trying to convey to the people of the day the importance of their growing relationship with Jesus. Not only is he trying to signify the importance of a relationship with Jesus, he's trying to signify the importance of a growing relationship with Jesus. So plain and simple, he's speaking this over the people. This was big time kingdom building stuff. But how is it? How is it possible that so many people say the Bible is irrelevant, it's too old, it's dated? How crazy is it that Paul was speaking to people 2,000 years ago who were still struggling with this idea and concept of growing in their relationship with Jesus? Right? And this is not a time to make you feel bad. This is a time of saying, like, this has been an issue forever, right? That people, like, we have to take our relationship with Jesus seriously about growing our relationship with Jesus. But people struggled with the idea of expecting growth. But as I was working on this passage and I was praying through this weekend, I wanted to know the why. So why was Paul talking about this? Why was Paul talking to these people in this manner? Because this is like, he's being like very blunt, very straightforward. I want to know what the context is and why he's talking to the people. And so he's talking to the people because he is seeing stuff or he is hearing stuff for them that is proving and giving him the grounds to say what he is saying. So let's put it into some more context. I think there's a reason why Paul's using some of this language. Paul was a very passionate person, like intense. He was an extremely intense person. If you don't know about Paul, Paul used to go by the name of Saul. And Saul, his professional job was to like kill Christians. Right, he was a bad guy. And so Saul had this experience with Jesus and this crazy conversion to where Jesus changed him so much, changed his identity so much that he became Paul. And so when you think about what this man went through, this transformational story in his life, now it kind of makes sense why Paul is taking it so serious talking about kingdom stuff. He's saying, guys, you don't understand the true transformation that Jesus can have in your life. I'm living proof of it. Like you wouldn't believe the depths of what I used to do and how God has changed my life in the best way. And he wants to do that to you. Like that's what he's wanting to give to you. And so when you put that context into how Paul is talking to these people, you're like, okay, yeah, that makes way more sense. Because what Paul is saying, he is giving this sign of warning of saying like, yeah, you can come and participate and you can come and do the simple things. That's great. Do that. Please do that. But I believe, Paul is saying to these people, I believe that God has the best designed for you to live into. But you have to expect him and allow him to work in your life in that way. But here's the cool part. In Hebrews 5, verse 11, I'm going to read it again. It should be up on the screen. It says, we have much to say about this, but it is hard to make it clear to you because you no longer try to understand. I found that so interesting Have you ever been there before? So let's take a step back. I know we're in church, but let's take a step back and let's maybe remove some of the spiritualness from this conversation. Have you ever been in seasons where you just wanted to like throw in the towel? Like you were just spent, you'd had enough, you were tired, and you just wanted to throw in the towel. Maybe a season for you has looked like this. Maybe it's been a season where you have experienced loss after loss after loss after loss. When you're at work, you're never in the top sales. When you're at work, you can't seem to figure out the project, right? And you just experience this loss after loss after loss. It seems like you're never able to get over that next bump that's in the road, that the task in front of you seems so overwhelming, that things are becoming dull to you. And one of the things that I want to tell you today is that these are just simply fears. And it's hard, right? And it's hard. It's really hard to keep going when you feel like this is your path forward. Because of everything that I've experienced in my past, it is so hard to move forward because I'm not convinced it's going to get better. And so what does this look like in reality? A word that came to my mind as I was working on this passage was complacency. And I don't know if you know this or not, but complacency will stunt your growth. And as I was tackling this message and praying through this message, I think that's the why. I think that's why Paul was saying you're not even trying anymore. Like you're not even trying to understand what God can truly be in your life because you've become complacent. And it's going to stunt your growth. So what causes complacency? What causes complacency? It could be the fear of failure. It could be the fear of what people will think of you, or it could be your desire to be comfortable is so great that your desire to not be out of your bubble is so great that you stay in a season of complacency. And I don't want to discourage you, but I do want to tell you that these are all things. These are all things that are crushers of your potential. Right? I mean, crushers of potential. And it's the same way with our relationship with Jesus, right? So we kind of stepped away from the spiritual side of things and now we're kind of back into this realm again. It's just to make it spiritual. These are crushers of what God has in store for you. What God has designed to be best for each and every one of you. Because here's the temptation. And I have lived into it so many times. The temptation with our relationship with Jesus is that we convince ourselves of, well, I've arrived. I'm here now, right? And we get there at different steps along the way, but it's this idea of like, are we truly expecting continual growth? Because I know for me, I have a lot of growing to do. I have so much growing to do. And I don't know if anybody can resonate with that today, but if you're taking notes, I encourage you to write this down. Every time you grow, you will be out of your comfort zone. Every time you grow, you will be out of your comfort zone. You know, it's interesting that sometimes growing comes from things that you might simply not want to do. I know I've experienced that so many times in my life where I have grown because I have gotten out of my comfort zone. I got a story that I want to share with you. So back when I was becoming a pastor, well, I mean, technically I was a pastor, but I was still in like my licensing and up for ordination and all that stuff. And essentially, so every year you had to sit in front of this like board of pastors, right? They were mentors, accountability, all that kind of stuff. They made sure that your course of study was on pace and you were keeping your hours together and continuing education, all this stuff. And so you would sit in front of them and they would just kind of interview like all these questions to you. And it wasn't too bad, but I remember one of the questions always was like, well, what are you reading right now? Like what's feeding you? Like what are you reading, right? Whether it was a book in the Bible, whether it was the latest, trendiest ministry thing, like they wanted to know like kind of what you were reading. And so in my immaturity, I thought, well, I'm gonna teach these veteran pastors a lesson, right? That's what I thought. And so this question came up. They said, hey, well, Pastor Harold, like what are you reading these days? So I thought I'd be smart because I was one of those guys that was like young and I'm gonna fix what's wrong with the church. And so I was talking with them and I said, well, to be honest, I'm reading, but I don't read a ton. And some of you are thinking, no kidding, right? And so, but I told them, I was like, hey, to be honest, I don't really read a lot because I don't want to read because an organization wants me to read. Right? Like, I don't want to read because I have a panel of you guys who just say I should, because that defeats the point of the reading. Pretty smart, right? You're like, yeah, Pastor Harold, you're on to something. And I thought, I was like, I had them, right? I had them on their heels, and they go, Harold, you're an idiot. And they said, because they said, explain yourself. I said, well, I don't eat unless I'm hungry. Like I don't go to the pantry until I'm hungry. So why would I just read just to read? Right? Like why would I eat just to eat? Like that doesn't seem, it seems counterintuitive, all the stuff, right? And they go, Harold, but taking that illustration that you have, they go, but like, why is it important for you to eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner? Like, do you always eat lunch when you're hungry or when you're not hungry? No, like you eat lunch because it's nutritional and it's good for you and it's a good habit. And they said, breakfast, like you should eat breakfast. It's the most important meal of the day to get you, to get your day on the right foot and keep going in the right direction. Like it's huge. It's a huge discipline to eat breakfast every single day. And they're like, there's a reason why you should eat 3 meals a day. And I had this kind of dumbfounded look on my face because they were like, it's nutritional for you. It's good for you. And I was thinking about that in my own spiritual life. And I think about some of the moments where I've had major gaps and major shortcomings. And it was because I wasn't prepared in those moments. It's because I wasn't doing spiritual practices that I should have been doing that kind of got me into that mess. And it's interesting that like, you know what? Well, maybe if I would have started my day with a little prayer and maybe a little bit of reading, could that have got me through that 10 o'clock meeting a little bit better? Man, if I would have just spent some time listening to something more productive with my time, I mean, could I have handled that conversation with my kids a little bit better? Like would that have prepared me? And it's interesting that I only want to do those things when I know it's going to benefit me. Ooh. Can anybody else relate to that? It's tough, right? But I'm here to tell you that that we're in this together. That I have not figured this out, and I'm still working on this stuff and trying my best to do my absolute best to figure this out. But it's this idea of like we have to be constantly vigilant about expecting growth in our life. I'm going to land the plane here in just a moment. There's a story in the Bible that's truly incredible, and it's basically the poster child of complacency. It's found in the book of Samuel, 2 Samuel, chapter 11. I'm going to read one verse, and then I encourage you, if you're taking notes, go write this down. It's a story of David and Bathsheba, and it's 2 Samuel 11:1, and the passage says this. It says, in the springtime, at the times when kings go off to war, David sent Joab with the king's men and the whole Israelite army. And so essentially what is happening is, this is King David, like the same David that like beat Goliath David, like the man after God's own heart David, an awesome person. But the interesting thing about this passage, it says in the springtime when kings go off to war, it's basically saying when kings are supposed to be doing king things, right? And so, but David stays back. Why does he stay back? I don't know. Was he sick? I don't know. Was he tired? I don't know. Was he injured? I don't know. Was he felt like he's won too much? I don't know. Was he in a season of losses? I don't know. But he stayed back. He stayed back when he should have been doing what kings do. He stayed back. He stayed home. Maybe he was fully convinced, I'm David, I'm King David, I'm the man after God's own heart, I'm David, and he found this season of complacency. So why are you telling me this story? Complacency led to an amazingly difficult time for David. So the story goes that David was home and he was walking around and he got into the biggest pickle ever of constant turmoil and pain simply because he was at home doing this, just twiddling his thumbs, being complacent. And I'm telling you, friends, that I have found myself in the midst of difficultness because of my complacency, because my inability to understand what it means to expect growth. And so how on earth do we combat that? Right? How on earth do we combat that? Number one, it looks like this. It's realizing that you are in a season of complacency, not to discourage you. This is a message of warning. This is a message of awakening. This is a message for you to be able to have conversations with your kids, with your spouse, with your coworkers, right? Are you in a season of complacency? Number two, I encourage you in some way, get out of your bubble of comfort. Get out of your bubble of comfort. Maybe some of you have been looking from the outside in at a small group for a long time. And maybe you need to take that step. It's uncomfortable. I get it. Is this group going to be full of a bunch of weirdos? I don't think so. I don't think they are. But maybe you need to take that step and get into a group. Maybe you need to take that step and click the button to order a book for you to read that's online. Get out of your bubble of comfort. And number three, don't give up. Don't give up, because I'm here to tell you today that God has an absolute best design for each and every one of you. I believe that with everything that I am. I believe that with everything that I am, and that God is speaking that over you right now. And so I encourage you that your next step is to grow into what God is calling you to grow into. It might be uncomfortable. It might be difficult. But I want to be a church that not only expects growth in our programming and with what we do and doing things with excellence and doing things with so much energy and commitment. That's great. But I want to be a church of a people who expect growth in their personal relationship with Jesus. If you're able, would you get on your feet? We're going to sing the song again, Welcome the Healer. And I want that word just to pour over you, that the healer, the God of creation, the God that created you is creating your healing. He's writing your future into place if you just trust him. He has something amazing for each and every one of you. And let's sing this together.